All right, Proverbs chapter 6, let's call this one My Son, Her Beauty. In this proverb that once again seems to have Solomon or another wise man counseling his son about some of the things that he needs to be careful of going forward in life. This being a set of Psalms, once again, where he is warning his son about the wayward woman or the adulteress. Last chapter, we emphasized the way in which her words can be smooth and therefore set a trap for the young man. This time, he's going to emphasize not only her words, but her beauty in this chapter that doesn't simply focus on the adulterous wife. It focuses on some other enemies of his future, not the least of those being debt in verses 1 through 5, what seems to be delay in verses 6 through 11, not to simply pick on the wayward woman, but wicked men in verses, I think it's 12 through 19, going on from verses 20 through the end of the chapter to, as we said, talk about the dangers of the wayward woman and her beauty. But it's not just her beauty that's an issue. Looking a little bit more in depth into each section, that section on debt doesn't simply talk about staying out of debt or personal debt. It's the debt that we can fall into when we can be tempted to want to help people who have gotten themselves in a difficult financial situation, reminding us again of the ways in which the word cautions us to set effective boundaries. And likewise, this proverb begins with the writer cautioning his son regarding the ways in which he might be tempted to offer security or a pledge on behalf of another who quite likely has gotten themselves into, once again, a financial bind. Going forward, though, into that second set of verses or cautions in which he talks about the dangers of delay, he uses a relatively famous line saying, "Go to the ant, you sluggard." And so, much like the previous warnings about debt, don't simply caution his son not to get into debt. He says, don't even sleep until you deal with the matter. Likewise, that warning about prioritizing even sleep after certain urgent matters is going to be what he cautions his son about in saying, go to the ant, you sluggard, understanding that too much sleep is going to allow time to pass you by, and even the ant, without a captain or a leader, understands the urgency of the moment, understanding that when the time is right, when you have an abundance, it's wise to use that abundance for days in which it might not be there, or days in which you might be a little bit short. Which leads into verses 12 through 19, which warn against the worthless person or the wicked man. Amongst the red flags for the wicked, two things are going to come up in both sections. Understanding that 12 through 19 break up into two sections. The one tie that binds them is the tendency to spread discord. Understanding that the second section of verses 12 through 19 is going to talk about a relatively obscure set of things that God is said to hate. 6 things the Lord hates, 7 he despises: a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that hurry to run to mischief, a lying witness that testifies falsely, and one who sows discord among the brethren. Understanding that we can often be tempted to replace passages about accountability with tales of God's great grace and love, this passage reminds us that there are some not only characteristics, but there are some people that God actually hates. Going on, however, to the subject passage, the last section that talks about the wayward woman. Once again, the writer of the Proverbs is warning his son, like we said, don't simply be cautious of her smooth speech, also be careful of her beauty. And beyond physical beauty, my ad lib would be that each of these dangers seems to carry a spiritual or metaphorical beauty of their own. Understanding that it can feel great to come in and help someone who is in need, it is important to count the cost of what it will really take to get this person out of their situation. Likewise, the whole concept of delay. It's one thing to simply be lazy, but when you feel overwhelmed by life, there is a certain sense of beauty that comes with the thought of rest. But in the end, it is important to count the cost of that rest if there are important matters that possibly merit a higher priority. Likewise, the discord mentioned in Proverbs chapter 6, for whatever reason, reminded me of a similar discord described in the book of Titus, chapter 3, beginning at verse 10, where it reads, "As for a person who stirs up division, after warning him once and then twice have nothing more to do with him, knowing that such a person is warped and sinful. He is self-condemned. Understanding that the kind of division described here in the Greek actually carries forth the meaning of creating a following. And so there is a certain sense of beauty or euphoria that can go along with having a following. However, this proverb seems to be cautioning us to count the cost of the way in which we build a following. Understanding that the last section, the section about the wayward woman, goes beyond cautioning us to be careful of her smooth words, to understand the danger of her beauty. It seems to be cautioning us about the dangers of the way in which shady opportunities appeal not only to our mind, smooth words, but our emotions, the beauty in the hustle.